today's episode, I get caught with my fingers in a crack. We look at some bricks and blocks, and I explain my ideal fireplace. Yesterday we had an absolute bloody nightmare. We had the building inspector out to have a look, so he had a look round, he was happy with absolutely everything, but he had got one concern, which he ended up leaving, going away, double checking and coming back, and it was a major problem. So the problem that we had was our build, when we sent it across to be approved by building regs, was all done before the regs changed last year. And we ordered all the materials based on what was approved. And one of the things that we ordered, or we thought we'd ordered, was the insulation. So on the old regs, the cavity was 100mm wide, or minimum. So we got 100mm, 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 giving a 303mm-ish overall build. The problem that we had was my architect had specified a certain type of insulation, which is called cavity batt insulation. I ordered exactly what he specified. Unfortunately, we didn't have that delivered. What actually come was a different product. So there was a cavity wall and a cavity wall plus. I wouldn't have even known the difference because this is not my bag. But the difference that I found out now is these cavity walls come in basically a section that wide, which meets exactly 2 blocks. So the cavity wall plus insulation is a tongue and groove material, and basically it's designed to fit against the block work nicely, tight, held up, and there'll be a 10mm air gap between the outer skin of brickwork. The normal cavity wall stuff, which is non-tongue and groove, is designed to have a 50mm air gap. So I've ordered the cavity wall plus, and what we've had delivered is standard cavity wall. And that's where it's caused us an issue, because basically the building regs guy, when he come out and had a look, he basically said, you haven't got enough air gap in the cavity. So that was panic stations. I've then rung the manufacturer of the material, and they've said, well, the insulation values are exactly the same for both product, but it's all to do with the transfer of damp. So then I've got another thing to throw into the mix, because what we did is, on the standard cavity wall that was installed, I also wanted all the joints taped. So what that means is your 2 pieces of insulation come together, and you put like a foil back special tape across them, and that basically helps with the thermal value, and also it stops the transfer of any damp that may be in the cavity coming through to the inside of the house. The firm does a data sheet on cavity wall and a data sheet on cavity wall plus, but they don't do a data sheet on cavity wall with tape joints. So therefore, the building couldn't be signed off. So that's the problem we've then got, because we've basically got a construction by where the only way to change that insulation that's in there is to take it back down. Now obviously we were already at first floor, or just below first floor, with the outer skin, so that was not an option to take it down and waste all them bricks. So what we did is we went back to building regs, and to be fair, our guy Derek is very, very good, and we had some long conversations about what we could do. And what we're going to do now is we're going to do a system on the inside here, which we'll come to later on in the build, and when we're doing it we'll show you how we've rectified it. But we've managed to sort it out and change the insulation over for the rest of the project, so that we haven't got to do it upstairs, we've only got to do it down here. But as you can imagine, I spent all day researching, phone calls, trying to rectify this massive problem, which unfortunately wasn't caused by us. We'd ordered the right stuff. The architect had specified the right stuff, but we'd had the wrong stuff delivered. And I didn't know the difference. Now I do, so I'm going to show you in case anybody else comes up against it. So this is the standard cavity wall insulation. So this is square. So basically there's no, one sheet just sits on top like that nicely. The wall ties through here, and the red clip that holds it together goes on. Now we tape that joint, like I said, so we made that product a better system by doing what we've done. What we should have had, I've got some offcuts here. is the Cavity Wall Plus, which has this tongue and groove effect. So you've got two sides that have got a tongue, which is that bit that sticks out, and you've got two sides that have got a groove. And basically how it works is that any damp, so this is the blockwork on the inside, this is the outside with the gap, the air gap, and then you've got the brickwork. So any damp that comes through, if it manages to bridge the gap and get onto the product here, it runs down, but it can't actually go uphill and get across and go into the inside of the house. So there's no transfer of damp from the outside to the inside. Now, in theory, with the square stuff, if that was the square edge, and we've taped that joint, there should also be no way of transfer of damp. But by the by, because there's no data sheet, building regs couldn't sign it off, and that left me in a pickle. So that's your standard wall tie, and basically what happens is you'd lay this layer of block, you'd sit your wall tie on the top of your cement, and you'd leave it hanging out like that. And then when you come to then put your insulation on afterwards, you have these red discs. So that will be fixed in the wall. You put your insulation on, so you slide your insulation on, and then basically you slide this clip on like that, and you push it up tight until it grips, and that holds your insulation nice and tight against the blockwork wall. And the idea of the tie itself is, as you're building up, obviously that sits well on there and leaves it hanging out, and basically it sits on sort of somewhere just below the surface of the mortar joint here, and then it sits slightly lower on the mortar joint on the outside, so that that tie is also effectively, in extreme, it's on that angle, so that any water again that penetrates and comes into the cavity can't travel uphill. So it can't chase all the way along there back to the inside of the blockwork. This is the underside of the block and beam floor now. So this is basically a reinforced concrete beam that sits on the masonry both sides, and that comes through, and it's in I'll show you the shape of it in a minute because I've still got one over there that I've not yet fitted. And then on top of that you sit a standard concrete breeze block, and that sits within. On top of that, you then brush a screed over the top to fill in all the gaps before you then put your insulation and then your floor screed. So it's quite sort of, it's not often that you'll see this on a first floor. The reason that we went for it is because we wanted underfloor heating on both floors. So a lot of places will perhaps have underfloor heating on the ground floor and then maybe radiators upstairs. Some people say you don't even need that, but we wanted underfloor heating on both floors, which means then you need to go to a block and beam floor, which is a heavier design to take a bigger load, because we're putting all of that screed, all of that water and everything upstairs for heating the house. So that's the underside, and then basically there is a system that goes on the underside of here, which gives a void for all of your electric services, any air movement, any HV, can't even think what it's called, heat recovery, if you like, if you're running the ducts and the pipe work to take all the air in and out the room, all of that will go in here under this system that fits to this. And then on the underside of that, you then put your plasterboard, your plaster and your paint finish. So all of that will be sealed up and you'll never see any of it afterwards. So like I was saying, that is your standard sort of block and beam. Ours is 7" or 175 mil from top to bottom. That's the sort of shape of it. And then what happens is you have one there, or wherever it sits on the masonry, and that is the lip and the gap where that block sits, a standard concrete block. One of the things that we found really funny through the build process so far is the fact that there are so many choices, so many options. When you've got something already there, like if you bought a house and you were renovating it, or you wanted to change the layout and alter rooms or decor, kitchens, bathrooms, whatever it may be, you've got something, you've got a start point. You know, we can't afford to change the windows, so we're going to keep the windows as they are, and then the rest of the room flows with that. When you're starting from complete and utter scratch, it's really difficult, because every single choice that you make is from a blank canvas, which it sounds great and it sounds ideal. And when we were thinking about building our own house, it did sound absolutely fantastic, but now everything is a nuisance. Everything is a complete and utter nightmare, because you think of one thing and you think, well, okay, but then that affects the next and the next and the next, and before you know it, there's so many choices that you just don't know what to do. Hence why we've had the problem with the Inglenook. So the other issue that we've had this week is the Inglenook Fireplace. So what we've done here, the blockwork was built, if you like, all of this blockwork here. And then as we're building up, we get to a point where we need to put the starter block on. So the starter block is a cast slab which has got a mesh, reinforcing mesh inside. So we build a mould effectively, and we set the starter block for the chimney in, which is a round tube with a base on it. And then from that, each section of the chimney gets built up all the way up in like a foot or so section. And then a steel liner will go in that afterwards. So we built all that up, and then I asked Edwina exactly what she wanted, and it was a Inglenook fireplace. I specifically asked the question of, do you want the same bricks as the outside? And she said yes. And then she's come in here and had a look at it and decided that is not what she wants. So I'm not at fault, she is. But we now have a brick-built Inglenook, and she doesn't want any brick showing. So I haven't got a clue what we're going to do to rectify this, but a little bit of a waste of time and money there, and I blame her. Clayton!
Lee!
Housebuild Montage. Okay, so we're doing the same again. We're going to split this episode in half because it's a bit lengthy. So we'll bring you the second half of the house build catch up on Friday. Friday's quite a big day for us. It's our birthday, as in Fowler Gilbert's birthday. We've been trading and manufacturing buildings for 12 years, so we're going to have a lunch on Friday, so we'll probably just tag a bit of that on to the end of the video on Friday. So if you like what you've seen, please subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and we'll catch you on Friday. Cheers.